And for 6 months, he sent us messages, go fuck yourself. I hope you die. I hope you get cancer. I hope your kids are Trump voters. Like everything. Everything. That was the nicest one.
To paraphrase Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with gender-bent historical figures? Why have we got to have a sexy Christopher Columbus? Why have we got to have a sexy Nobunaga Oda? What do you think the appeal is?
I worked on Utawaru no Mono, actually, Magic of Deception, when I spent some time with Atlas back in 2016.
Yep.
And there's a scene in there from her tutor, who's supposed to be also one of her bodyguards, where she gets spanked, but they took it out for the version that they actually released here. We actually got to see what the real scene looks like.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Hey Poor podcast. Here today, I am your host, Jonathan Trussler, Deputy Editor of HeyPoorPlayer.com. And with us here today, we have Chris.
Hello.
We have Mike Vito.
Hello.
We have Josh.
Hey.
We've got Benny.
Hello.
We have Heather.
Hi.
And we have Tatiana.
Hi.
There we go. Now, my finger pointing may not correspond on your screens, but it corresponds to mine, so it will correspond to all the viewers. Anyway, okay, so let's get started. Now, most importantly of all is our beloved Hey Poor Player community, so we're going to start off by answering some questions from them. Firstly, Nut Train. It sounds like Night Train, but it's got no I, so it'll just have to be Nut Train. Nut Train 36 says he wouldn't mind hearing about our opinions about the PSVR 2 controllers, and I believe one of us has had some experience with those. Was that you, Mike?
Well, I haven't. The controllers aren't out yet.
Oh.
But I have experience with the original the PlayStation Move controllers that are out for the original PSVR, and Benny as well. But yeah, the new controllers, I think they're going to add a lot because they have the nubs on both controllers. And if you are familiar with the old PlayStation Move controllers, those didn't have any kind of control sticks on them at all. You were just basically, you had all buttons. So there was really no way of moving around without kind of pointing and clicking or kind of just holding a button, and it just didn't feel natural. And I mean, as you guys know, PlayStation VR, you want everything to feel natural, or it's going to feel, you're going to kind of put yourself out of that space, and you're also going to kind of make yourself a little bit dizzy by pointing where you want to go and just showing up in a spot. But I'm real excited to get these new controllers, no pun intended, in my hands, because they look like really, the movement's going to feel more natural.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I saw them, they looked a lot like Oculus Rift S controllers. Like, they just kind of reminded me of that shape a little. Or not the Rift S, is it the Vive one? No, It's not the Vive either. I'm sorry.
I think they both kind of have that odd, surrounding plastic around your hand kind of look.
Yeah. And it's funny because, I have an Oculus Rift S. I just haven't used it in a long time. So I'm like, what do my controllers even look like?
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat.
That's the weird thing about VR. It's like Benny was saying before we started, how often do you use it? I love VR. It's probably one of the more new ways of playing video games that I've experienced since, the Super Nintendo to the PlayStation. But it's so cumbersome to just set it up and get it going, you know?
Yeah, you've got to have the space and everything for that. And sometimes it's hard. This room here is not really designed for me to kind of move around. That was the same problem I had with the Kinect, back with the Xbox 360. I have one. I have to go set that up in the living room if I ever want to use it again. But the space is a big problem. for me personally, a lot of because I'm very much a Japanese niche gamer, so the examples of VR I've seen have been basically in Senran Kagura, Peach Beach Splash, which is not really good VR. There's a reason for it. Hyperdimension Neptunia V2R, which actually was okay, though it was a very passive experience. And then I have Toho Kabuto Burst V on my shelf over there, which I beat. I never even bothered setting up the PSVR to do the VR mode on that, just because I was like, the game's fun enough as it is, and I don't want to go through that entire, hassle of setting it up. But I'm hopefully with this new, PSVR 2, coming, hopefully the devs will, I don't want to quite say take it more seriously because it's not really the right phrasing, but have more of an interest in maybe developing games targeted specifically for this, especially now that they can, they don't have to think of some new way for movement. They will have movement on those sticks like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of odd Japanese VR games, this is embarrassing, but somebody got this for me this week. It's the summer VR lesson. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to play this, but if I do, I will update you guys on the Hey4 podcast eventually.
You're a married man, aren't you?
I know.
Yeah. We're going to need a review.
And she saw it too. Like, we went to the bar with a friend and he handed it to me. She was like, "What's that?" I was like, "You don't want anything to do with that." I just threw it in the car real quick.
You're just tutoring a young Japanese schoolgirl who, needs some lessons,
Yeah.
There you go.
That's what
Nothing wrong with that. Right, well, moving swiftly on. What do we think about Sony's buyout of Evo and what it means for the future of competitive gaming? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Let's focus on Smash Brothers.
Right.
No, I was just thinking about this earlier. Is gaming, like the gaming industry as a whole, just totally flies under the radar in despite the fact that it's like such a large industry making billions, right? I mean, Fortnite alone in 2018 made like $2 billion. So it's like, it's crazy how much money gaming makes, yet how much it flies under the like anyone's radar. And yet you're seeing these companies like Sony, like Microsoft starting to buy up more and more developer, it's like there's going to get to a point where they start monopolizing a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And like all these indie studios are going to keep popping up. I mean, there's solo indie devs who are just making games in their garage versus like, indie studios that are made of like 10, 15, 20 people. And
somebody
Sorry, that's on my end.
No worries.
Whoops.
So I'm wondering, like, maybe there will be a point where it looks like it's monopolizing, or maybe it'll just be that indie studios keep popping up to kind of replace the ones that get bought out, so it never gets noticed. And it was just something that like occurred to me where it was like, I wonder if they're ever going to pay attention to gaming, other than when it becomes like the scapegoat, to like, oh, violent video games. Like aside from that, like they'll never notice that it's monopolizing.
I guess, yeah, that's the thing. Like these indie studios, they just keep popping up. I mean, that's the thing I think we realized in the modern era. You can make a game that is better than a lot of big budget games, just like with one developer shoestring budget, whatnot. So yeah, I mean, that's how I think they might get around the whole monopoly thing. They're just like, oh well, this indie guy just popped up the other day. He made this game. It was a huge success, So I think that's just kind of in the nature of gaming. I don't think it's kind of like other industries like, say, chicken farming, where they've got those terrible monopolies and whatnot. Just indie studios can just keep popping. Anyone with $100 can just go on Steam and publish their game, and maybe it's a hit.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'll say, if to kind of interject only one thing on that, it's the biggest thing that's going to possibly, I don't want to say regulate it, but people are going to start having to look at some point are the storefronts. Because if you really think about it, yes, anyone can go ahead and make a game. That's not the hard part. It's where are you going to put it? If you want to go with Sony, it's the PSN basically. Microsoft has the Microsoft Store, be it for PC or for the Xbox. and PC also has Steam. Outside of that, what do you kind of do? And that's kind of like we see this a lot with visual novels, especially 18 plus visual novels, or if you're going to go into like even fan games, like basically almost all the Toho stuff that's not actual, developed by Zune. Where do they throw those up? They throw them up basically on like DL site. For a lot of the VNs, it's Bonka Gamer, Jast, Tempesoft. Like, those are still storefronts. Now they're more open storefronts for sure, but that's kind of the thing. That's going to be your choke point. Honestly, it's not. I don't think it's going to be so much the development, but what stores will live and survive as time goes on. And if we're going to have any sort of regulation, it'd be there.
That makes sense.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think if we talk about the kind of like massive monopoly having a stranglehold, it's Steam, isn't it? Well, for PC anyway. I mean, yeah. So yes, Steam takes a pretty big. I think it's 30% or something, a 30% cut, which is pretty, substantial.
Yeah.
And like, if a developer doesn't like it, well, too bad.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
There's more competition coming out though. Like, isn't there like the Epic Games Store, and Apple has their own version of that as well? And doesn't CD Projekt Red even have their own?
Yes, Good Old Games. Yes, it is actually owned by CD Projekt Red.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
And there's also Itch.io, of course. I don't know who's heard of that, but a lot of kind of charity games and indie games and stuff on there as well.
They are out there.
A ton of games from Kickstarter too. They're also on Itch.io.
That's true.
Plenty of VNs that have been funded through Kickstarter are on there. Yeah.
Yeah. The key thing with a lot of those is that I'll say is just the awareness is not quite there yet. Eventually, I think you're going to get people who will realize there are alternatives to get your games than from Steam. The big benefit to Steam, and this is something I go through, and in fact, to site plug something, I kind of this would have solved everything with my AU Senki issues and Jast. Updates. Updates are just super easy through Steam, and until somebody, and there are some, I think, I'm not as familiar. I don't know if the Origin thing from EA actually does update its games through that launcher, but it's going to really be the next storefront that's going to really succeed is going to be the one that makes updating games super easy, just like Steam did. And that's an infrastructure problem, which is why no one has done it yet.
I think that what's also kind of problematic about Steam is that Steam is mandatory for a lot of big PC games. And that's why it has, a huge install base. And as you said, it's got the convenience of providing the updates. It's your updates, it's your launcher. It's like a place where you can find reviews, and it's a storefront all in one, which is why Steam just has this strangle. It's not, there is a rebel alliance of other little storefronts we've talked about, but Steam it is the empire with the force choking. It's
the most fully featured store out there, and I mean that's the problem.
This is why I like physical gaming as much as I can.
But many physical games just force you to install Steam anyway. So
no, I mean I agree with that. I'll take physical where I can, just because I like having it. But if you just do physical, or if you just do digital, you miss a bit. Like, you can still get plenty of digital games that are physical, but it's like there's something that you miss. Like, either way, like it's better to just find both, I guess.
That new Blu-ray smell. Yeah,
well,
that cartridge definitely the same.
I can't be the only one who
feel
does
the
that.
need to just have something that's like that, unless I'm forced to absolutely get the digital version. I need to have.
I mean,
is
there still physical PC media, like gaming media?
I don't know about PC. I know there is for Switch, but
yes, there is.
I know that there is some.
Really?
Yeah. What was it? I think my last one was when I got Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. There were a lot of people that wanted the PC version of that, and in CD form. Yeah.
Here's the other thing.
There were more people that was also the PlayStation version, but it was also spread amongst all of the consoles, from Nintendo Switch all the way to So everybody also got they also got the PC version and the Steam version. So it was just kind of, they covered all bases for everyone. And I kind
That's
of
really
liked
cool.
that.
Nice.
But that was kind of like the last major big release as far as being funded by the people through Kickstarter all those years ago. And I
Mhm.
got in on that pretty
Right.
early. Yeah.
We
I
run
think-
into this
Nice.
problem a lot in the VN space. This is kind of the where the hybrid kind of comes in, and it runs into an interesting issue. For example, AU Senki Gold. I pre-ordered the limited edition of that through Jazz, which is how I got my digital code for the review. But also, I have a physical version coming in a couple of months. Here's the weird thing, though. So this goes back to the update issue. All right, I buy a digital game through Steam or some other thing. That I get updates automatically delivered. But if I have a physical copy, well, what's on that disc is what's on that disc. So let's say there's a patch that comes out after that. How do you know you need to install the patch? And so it's actually, there's a little bit of, like, it's one of those, the physical media, and I agree with Josh, I'm a physical guy. I mean, just look behind me, it's like, I love collecting stuff. But, and with PC, it's nice to have those because if, say, that storefront ever goes away, especially with some of the VN stuff, you hope it never happens, but you never know. You can, I can grab that game off of my shelf over there, pop it in, install it, and, enjoy. But, especially as time goes on, say, for example, there are some games I have in there that they need update patches to work with Windows 10. I've got to make sure I can go find those versus if I buy the digital copy from, let's say Manga Gamer. As long as I go check, I'm like, all right, I'm going to reinstall this. Whatever the installer is they have on their site is the most recent version. 9 times out of 10. There might be a separate patch you have to install, but they usually try to bundle it in with that. But it's still, a lot of this is just an infrastructure problem, and really it's kind of one that's not easily solvable.
That's true, actually.
A good point. I think another thing that's kind of keeping physical media alive, is collector's editions. So not only you can get your regular case, or you can get it with a little statuette and an art book and a pack of cards and a bit of tat. It's another aspect of capitalism, selling like bits of plastic and paper, but packaging it as a collector's edition and charging like $100 and odd for it. That's very much keeping physical media alive, and I think it will do for a fair while yet.
Oh yeah, look at limited run games. That's their entire model.
Oh yeah, limited run games. That's where they're at. That's what they love to do. And sometimes I kind of like them being able to give us physical versions of games that had strictly digital media, because then it's almost like, oh, I missed out. Now I can finally have it. And in case I lose my original version, I have it. And it's really nice looking. Limited run really goes out of its way to make it look nice.
Yeah, my only problem with them is how long it takes to get the product. Like, if you order something from them, you don't know if you're going to get it in 4 months. It's most likely going to be a year or 2.
But, I've got all my Shantae stuff still waiting to be shipped to me, and I trust me, I feel for you on that one. I will say, as someone who's actually worked in a warehouse and have seen the packaging process that go on, a lot, to be fair to them, a lot of that's not really their fault. It's the supply lines. And especially in this last year, it's been really bad.
I mean, I don't think anyone's thinking that they're like, in the warehouse going, well, I'm not doing it. Not until I feel like it. Like, obviously, there's a reason for a delay.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just...
It's frustrating.
It's on... Yeah, it's just on the other end where I can't remember. I think it was limited run games I ordered from. It was one of them. I got the Gris special edition. Totally worth the wait, by the way. It is a beautiful collector's edition. But I was told to, check Discord for any updates. And I know we're on here talking in Discord. I don't love Discord. It is like, of all the social media platforms, it's my least favorite. And it's hard for because sorry to my Terra Genesis players, but if I get on my Terra Genesis Discord, like, they know I'm online and they start asking me questions about the game, and I'm like, guys, I don't have the time. I'm sorry, I can't be here. And that's what Discord does to you if you use it for work, I think. And so when you go and you say, this is how we're going to talk to our customers, it's like the last place you actually want to talk to your customers. It's really not organized.
Yep.
And so to use that as a customer service facing platform, I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah,
Like,
Terra Onion uses
I'd say that's
Discord,
fair.
and they got rid of their forums. It's like all Discord now, and it's the most confusing thing because you could miss something from days ago, and you got to search for it. And yeah, it's definitely
I
not
will
the
agree
easiest.
with I will agree with you there. Actually, even though forums are seen as quite antiquated now, but they in some ways they were better than
Mhm.
Discord.
Better. You could search
Yeah.
easier for your issue.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not forget the original question was, what do you think of Sony's buyout of Evo for competitive gaming? We went a bit.
It's
off
a
the rails,
monopoly.
but it's fun. Anyway, the
Yeah.
point is, it's all a big capitalist conspiracy. That's what you need to know. Monopolies. There we go.
Well, okay, I'll
Right
say this
power.
to kind of lead it back into there. I have a question about that. If anyone knows, is it Sony itself bought it, or is it the PlayStation division of Sony that bought it?
Hmm.
Because that's the key kind of question. Because if it is tied to, because Sony is a major corporation, keep that in mind. So just
Mhm.
because they bought this as part of, let's just say, and I'm throwing out a name, Sony Entertainment, not computer entertainment, but like some of their other major entertainment things. That could be something that group manages, and they're more than willing to let whatever they want in there because they want a profit for their shareholders. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what a business is for. If the PlayStation division has that, then that's when you kind of go, all right, what does this actually mean? Is it basically that mean we're only going to use PlayStations, for these games? If you're someone who, you're used to playing on PC or the Xbox, well, guess what? We're moving over to only, our main headliners are going to be played on the PlayStation.
That's what
Now we're
scares me.
PlayStation.
That's what scares me about the Bethesda thing.
Yeah.
Microsoft scares the hell out of me.
Now,
Yeah.
I'll say this. Are you going to see a lot more PlayStation tie-ins and advertising with Evo? Yeah, absolutely. That's just them leveraging the platform. But the key thing is, what do they do to those other, to those other fighters or even those other players who prefer a different platform to play on? Because an Xbox, an Xbox One controller, Xbox Series X, S and X controller is not the same as a PlayStation 4 or 5 controller. It's not the same as a fight stick. So if you're used to playing on one, you've got to learn how to play on the other then.
Mhm.
That's kind of where I would say that's more and I'm not really a fighting game person. So if you fighting game fans out there have been like, this makes no sense, I apologize. But that's just kind of looking at it from a outside perspective. That would be my concern, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on? Okay. So Nut Train had one more question. What do we think of Square Enix's recent live stream? Games revealed there. What games are we excited for?
So I missed the live stream because I don't sleep. I just make honey pop guides apparently. And so I don't know if Fantasian, if that's how you pronounce it, was shown during the live stream, but I know that's one that, oh no, it wouldn't have been, because did Square Enix, are they publishing it? I don't. No one knows. Okay, I should have Googled it.
Train.
Working on it.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Here we go.
I know. So, if they're publishing it, because I do think they are. So, but Hironobu Sakaguchi and Nobuo Uematsu have teamed up for that one. Basically, Sakaguchi was like, I really miss making games. I miss making games like the early Final Fantasies. I miss making that vibe, right? And so he teamed up with some of the older team and even brought on Nobuo Uematsu. And I think it was Damon who wrote the article on this, that basically it's like, this is probably Uematsu's last fully composed game. The last fully scored game for him. And it's like, he's had health issues. They've never really publicly said what it is, but like, we didn't even know if he could do this game, let alone anything in the future.
Do you know how old he is? I don't know how old he is.
In his 60s, I want to say.
Yeah, okay.
But he's been having some health issues for a while. And they always keep threatening that this is going to be the last one. I mean, Final Fantasy, then last song, now Fantasian, right? Like, but I think they mean it this time.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. If that was in the live stream. that I missed.
If it wasn't, then we'll edit this.
If it wasn't there, that's what I'm looking forward to.
I saw the bit.
I definitely want to check out the Life is. Sorry, Jonathan.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I saw the Outlanders stuff that looks super attractive and edgy. Incredible. It reminds me a little bit of the 90s, really. This really thrash metal music while you're kind of just chainsawing people in half, and you've got these edgelord villains who are like, I am a god, I will destroy you and crush you. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, anyway. And then the music's just go da, 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 you know, it's good fun. It looks like good fun. It looks a bit different than some other FPSs I've seen. Now you go, Mike.
Yeah, the Life is Strange remasters are interesting as well. I keep meaning to jump into that series, but I don't know, something just always pushes me away because I know, they're more story driven than gameplay, but they definitely, I have a few buddies who are like really into that story, and apparently it's really good. But yeah, they're remastering those for the next generation of consoles right now.
I've played the first one, and I'm a huge fan of the series, so I can say that I'm super excited for the sequel and for the remaster. So.
So, as someone who knows nothing about the series except for that it's really good and there are feelings involved, how sad is it?
Oh, it's very sad. The whole appeal is like you're basically living a choose your own adventure story from the perspective of whatever character that they're showcasing. And it's usually like a strong female protagonist who's going through some sort of emotional like trauma or some sort of issue, who then mysteriously discovers that they have powers. Whatever powers that it is kind of determined by which game. But the first one was like time rewinding, and it's really good and really dark. I was like, oh my god! Like some of the topics they hit, they breach. They're very, very, I guess, graphic, but also like they do it in a compelling way that I think isn't really addressed in other mediums. That you can really only pull off through these types of stories, which is really cool. So.
Okay, have you played? Do you know the To the Moon games? Have you played Rakuen?
No, it's not.
Okay, I was gonna say because like I'm trying to figure out how sad it is and if I'm willing to cry a lot or if I'm going to cry a little bit. Because I don't.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because You go.
I was gonna say the first game. I think a lot of people loved it too because they had really strong LGBT characters. And like an unprecedented form of representation and storyline that just wasn't really addressed at the time. And they keep going in that direction. They keep doing a lot of LGBTQ protagonists. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. No, I was just asking because like that is the game that made me literally curl into the fetal position and just bawl like a baby. I had to be consoled. And I don't have that ability to do that right now. Like I'm not mentally able. So I'm like, will I cry that much or will I cry a little bit?
Yeah, maybe pass on it for now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's really what they're known for. It's like,
I'd say you'll cry a moderate amount.
Okay.
because there are happy moments. It's not all doom and gloom. There are.
Oh no, there were happy moments in Rakuen, and that's what got me.
Oh yes, because you like the characters, you share all these times with them, and then they die or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, what I do like about Life is Strange is it is that time rewinding mechanic can create some just really clever puzzles. Like you do something stupid, but that kind of gives you the knowledge you need to solve a puzzle. Then you rewind and you do it again, and you think, well, this time I'll do this, or this time I know to do this. Yeah, it's very inventive, and that's what makes me want to give Life is Strange 2 a go, to see if they can kind of come up with a similar clever mechanic like that to separate it out from various other games.
Yeah. Well, I think this is Life is Strange 3 technically, but this one seems really cool because it's a weird combination of synesthesia and like emotion controlling. So like the main character, she can apparently see people's emotions as colors and then kind of control them. So like she can kind of make you feel a certain way or something, and using that kind of adjusts the storyline of some sort, which is really cool as a concept, I think, personally.
That is cool.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then again, I mean, like, does that raise some moral quandaries, perhaps? Manipulating people's emotions for personal gain, because that is a problem in Life is Strange, the original, because she uses her time powers to do things that she thinks will make things better, but actually make things worse. But in a different way.
That without someone who's ever played either of the games, just to answer your question, that actually does raise a lot of moral questions. But that's kind of the foundation of good storytelling in general. It's a good story to me is one that will make you think. I mean, if you even think about even your basic games, every protagonist has to do technically something morally questionable, be it kill somebody, even in defense, whatnot, etc. However, how the writers handle that stuff is the impact. For stuff like this, we don't see it all that often because, especially these days, emotional scars are the things that don't heal nearly as easily. So if you start twisting someone's emotions, even if you think it's to better them, are you being kind of abusive in that aspect? Are you really being helpful? Those are the things that just from hearing about this, that immediately that's where my mind goes. I go, this is fascinating. So I might actually have to dive into this at some point, maybe with the remasters.
And 100%, that's what Life is Strange. That's what makes them great games, personally. Is literally what you just said. Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Okay, well, if that's everyone's kind of thoughts on the Square Enix live stream, let's move on to another question. Okay, Mad Coco G says, what are some things that Sony could do to get more people to remember PS Now is still a thing? Just straight rip-off Game Pass? Question mark.
Okay, I actually had to go back and look up what PS Now was because that's kind of
I'm looking it up right now.
so what it was is it was Sony. It just launched, I think, with the PlayStation. I think it was the 4. But and I could be wrong on that. It might be the 3, but I think it's the 4. But that was their subscription service where you had to be online. It could paid so much per month, and you could basically stream games to your system, and that was their way of kind of around some backwards compatibility stuff for, say, like the PlayStation 2, because if it's on some server somewhere being emulated properly, the PlayStation 4 doesn't need to worry about anything but communicating with that server, which is a good way to kind of solve that issue. The problem is, and I remember why I never bothered with it, it's not looped into your PlayStation Plus at all.
Yeah, I'm reading that now.
Why?
That's just ridiculous.
So
That's dumb.
I have PlayStation Plus, and I think it works kind of how Game Pass should work. But PlayStation Now, to actually use it, is pretty much an add-on to PlayStation Plus that costs extra, which is kind of stupid in that sense. But you do get the bigger library. But so it is basically. I agree that it's basically a ripoff of Game Pass. Where PlayStation Now isn't something I personally see as a necessity for now. I think Microsoft does a much better job with Game Pass. I do love PlayStation Plus. Because not only is it online capability, but they give you a lot of monthly free games. They're fantastic right now. My God, I think they just gave away Final Fantasy VII for basically free. I mean, I don't really do too much in the Sony ecosystem these days. I've moved mainly to Microsoft, but I still maintain my PlayStation Plus, subscription, kind of begrudgingly, but mainly because I use it for backups of my save data. I don't want to lose that in case there's a game I want to go back and play, or something happens to my PlayStation 4 hard drive or whatnot. I can go ahead and re-download that. For some of those games, they're hundreds of hours I put in, so I'd rather not lose the save file unless I'm going to do, start a holding playthrough. The main, I'll say that's kind of the one thing you do have is the free games you do get. For me, there were some times during the PlayStation 3 era where they would, more of the Japanese developers like Bandai or something, where they would throw a couple of free games out for there. If you like a lot more mainstream games, I think it's a great bang for your buck. If you're someone like me who likes more of the niche titles, they're not really featured through that, so that's an aspect of it that doesn't really work for me personally. Versus Game Pass I do find actually has a mix of titles on there that I
do enjoy, and even if they're only temporarily free, because like for example, the Shantae games were up there for at one point, I think on Game Pass. They're not anymore. I don't believe they are. I could be wrong on that. I haven't checked recently, but Lego Star Wars, the original Saga was on there at one point, I remember. So that was Star Wars 1 and 2, and I 1,000 pointed that through Game Pass. Well, when I went to go back and play it to help a friend out with an achievement, I couldn't because it was off Game Pass and I have to buy it now. And I'm just going, I don't like it that much. But it's a good way to try things. And at the very least, it's a good way to, if there's a game, like it's kind of really the try. If you're on the fence about something, you can play it through Game Pass. And if you love it, pick it up. Like Toho Luna Nights, which we talked about in our Game of the Year podcast. I still need to go buy that. But dear Lord, I'm glad I've tried that through Game Pass because that was fun.
Do you think that there's kind
See,
of...
I used to be a big fan.
Oh, sorry, can I just quickly ask a
Go ahead.
question? I hope you can hold it in your head. So do you think there's a innate problem with a online streaming gaming service at the moment? As we all know, Google Stadia didn't work out the way they'd hoped, for sure. That definitely didn't work out. Do we think that there's a problem in the current environment with the online streaming games?
I would say it's going through the growing pains that any sort of new technology is going to go through, and that's kind of the biggest problem. Again, this is, I hate to kind of sound like beat a dead horse, but it's an infrastructure problem. You have really on the back end, one, you're trying to develop a store and get developers who want to post their games on there. Two, it's an always on service, so you have to have people who have decent internet connection speeds, which a lot of people point out, especially here in the U.S. for rural areas, that's not feasible sometimes. For other countries like Japan, they have amazing internet. So it's one of those where that makes more sense for them, but not necessarily for here. But then the other thing too is just kind of, I'll say with Stadia in particular, for me it would have been I'd have to buy new hardware, and it's like it might not be super expensive hardware, but it's another console I have to buy, hook up, or something. With at least PS Now, if they were to go ahead and loop that into PlayStation Plus, or even say like it's $5, okay, let's just say $5 add-on or something like that. All right, if that gives me access to hundreds of games, and I have a decent internet connection, and I can just pick up and play them, that's not terrible because they have the ecosystem to do that. Go ahead.
I think that's what they do now, and I still haven't jumped on. I'd rather just use Plus personally. Or if I'm really going to do it, I think Microsoft is the perfect place to figure this out personally. Because I think they have a much better online infrastructure than Sony, even though I'm a huge Sony fanboy.
Okay, Josh had a question. Sorry to cut you off.
I was just going to make a really quick statement. I used to be a fan of PlayStation Plus because a few years back someone convinced me to get a Vita. And for reference, my last Sony system was PlayStation 2. So I haven't done a lot with Sony, and I loved Vita while it was getting stuff, and then they just said, oh, we're going to chop it, no more support, nothing, no games. And it's kind of like, can I maybe get a way to buy the games I have through Plus or something to own them? But yeah, I'm not a fan of it anymore. I think they need to figure some ways out for making it more reliable in the long term.
So if you look at Sony's strategy like throughout the years, throughout the generations, and I think really starting with the PS3 generation, I think you'll notice that a lot of what they do and what they put out isn't necessarily to be innovative, but to just take a piece of the pie of what other people are doing. And we're talking the Move. Like, I mean, this came out I have a shirt here. What?
Wow, that's cool.
September 2010, right? What? So like, versus the Wii, which was out in 2006?
Right.
Like, so they were, like, oh, we got to, look at these things. They're selling like crazy. We got to do this. Connect, right? They were like, oh, we got to do the iToy. Then PS4 comes out and they're like, okay, VR is a thing. We got to do PlayStation VR. Like, they don't do things to be cutting edge. The last time I feel like they were really trying to get ahead of the market was the HD versus Blu-ray like the discs.
Yep.
Remember that battle in the PS3 era? Yeah. And so like they don't really get ahead of anything. They just adapt what is popular to their pre-existing hardware and then let it ride out until it dies. They're going to make some money off it. Maybe they'll break even. Maybe they'll make a lot. and then write it. And that's been their strategy. So with PlayStation Now, all that stuff, I think they let things die if they're just not if it's not gonna go much further. Like, and then the next generation will come, and the next thing will, like, Microsoft or Nintendo will do something good, and they'll adapt it to their system, lather, rinse, repeat.
I mean, I can see that to a degree. They'll say the biggest thing that's kind of kicked them, for that strategy is that why they adapt things. They don't necessarily refine them to the point where I think they could be the successes they were. The move is something that why interesting. Again, not a lot of people, from what I saw, used it. And then you kind of go into the aspect of, if we go back in a counter argument, though, if you go back to like the PlayStation 2 and even the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 2, cheapest, DVD player you could find. And it was a game console. The PlayStation 3, not the cheapest Blu-ray player until much later, but also because it was one of those things that it was a standard. I bought this, $400 to $600 console, and guess what? I can also play, the latest movies, and that really is that was one of those things. I think Sony corporate said, "Hey, you need to put this in here because this is our tech, and we need to utilize this," and that was a brilliant business strategy. With the other stuff, it kind of, like you said, it feels like they're adapting things, but not necessarily, like I said, refining them. And that's kind of the difference, I'll say, even if you go to look at Nintendo. Nintendo spent, the Wii was something they developed, and why some people argue maybe it stumbled into success. There was some actual thought, you can just in Wii Sports, for example, being packaged with that. And it worked because of the fact that it was refined for what they could do. And they did try to further refine it. Unfortunately, they also have their stumbling blocks like the Wii U, but, not everyone's perfect. But you look at the Switch. The Switch is basically a combination, an amalgamation, really, of almost all of their old consoles to some degree. And it's a brilliant little piece of tech. I don't play it enough, but it's one of those that you go, that's when you refine a concept, what you can get. And that's kind of the thinking that I would love to see Sony do at some point. Don't just take an idea, really refine it, work on it, and then put it out there once you're proud and polished. And PSVR is almost that. I'll give it that much, because it really was.
Exactly.
It did bring that to the consoles, which was something that we really lacked.
They're sticking with it. Right.
It may have been this generation's Blu-ray, right? Like, if the original PS was CD, then the next one's DVD, next one's Blu-ray. This may have been their second medium they brought to the system.
Yeah.
But that, if you think about it, that kind of works with the ethos of both the companies. Sony has been an entertainment company. I mean, they make movies, films, all that stuff. But Nintendo has always been a toy and novelty company. I mean, before video games, they took bowling alleys and they made them the laser shooter things, like in the 70s. And then before then, they made toys and Hanafuda cards. I mean, they made novelties, right? They did interesting things. That's just always been Nintendo. They innovate. But they also, because they're innovating, they become novelties at the same time, which is why when Sony jumps on something they do, it's too late. They have missed the boat. They will make some money, but it will not stick. It is a novelty. So I think that's why.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum that up.
I'm really surprised. I'm surprised none of these other companies did jump on the Switch interface, like where you could, take your console to go. I really thought this next generation of PlayStation and Xbox consoles were gonna copy that in some way.
I think I can answer that, and that's because mobile gaming has completely eaten into all of handheld console sales, completely eaten into it. Where it's, if you look at just like that's why Nintendo decided not to release 2, because they release a home and a handheld, and they were just like, our sales are being eaten by mobile gaming. So I'm a mobile app developer. Unfortunately, I see that cool, my industry killed my favorite thing, but it did. It sucks. But yeah, that's really why no one was really going into it. There was a high risk and not a lot of reward from what they could see.
I tend to think that there is kind of an unspoken thing at this point, that for, I really hate to say this, but this is what it's called, casual games. That's kind of Nintendo's thing. mobile gaming with the Switch that's been dominated by Nintendo as well. So I kind of get the feeling like Sony and Microsoft, they've just an unspoken feeling of, oh wow, well, we got to back the hell off. I mean, we can't really compete. We don't have the same demographic. I mean, I know, yeah, traditionally it's been the PS, the PlayStation and the Xbox have been the, again, I hate to do this, hardcore gamer or core gamer kind of console, and maybe this is just kind of that continuing. I mean, I think that's going to change these broad demographics they're looking at, but that may still be the way it is for now.
Yeah, not to like continue like on this because I could go all day about this stuff, but that's exactly why Nintendo pulled out of the cycle that they had where they were matching Sony and Microsoft and did a half-step console. So you see Nintendo consoles releasing slightly earlier than Microsoft and Sony consoles, because if they were to all release at the same time, Nintendo would be swallowed up. It is a more casual console, more family friendly. You buy it, you put it in your living room, and it kind of collects dust. I mean, that's what the Wii did. That's what the Wii U did. Like, every family has a Wii. Every family has Rock Band. How often did you play it after you played it for that first month or two? Like, many moms bought it so they could do karaoke, and then they were done. Like,
that's actually kind of the brilliance of the Switch, is because if it addresses two core, we touched on two core demographics. For us in the West, it's a console. I mean, I don't take my Switch with me all that often. It basically stays docked. Maybe if I'm going to play something, and I don't want to turn on the TV, I might grab it. Or if I want to listen to, some good music, in the game, I'll grab some headphones and do that. But in Japan and a lot of other countries where handheld gaming is the thing, well, guess what? You've got two kids. Guess how many Switches you just bought? You bought two. And that's kind of, they literally just took, hey, we know the DS sells well in certain countries. We know consoles sell well in certain regions. Let's just make something that does both, and we focus all our development on this one thing. And especially in their case, because that is their business, gaming is their thing, essentially. Now they're branching out a little bit more with like the Super Nintendo. I don't remember what the name of the theme park is in Japan that they're opening, but
they just opened.
Yeah, I don't remember the official name, so I apologize. But like, they're branching out into
Super
these things.
Nintendo World, I believe.
Yeah, it's something like that. But that they said, rather than try and support two platforms and two development cycles and all this, let's just make one, fuse it together, go with that, and kind of just attack our demographic, which we know mobile's encroaching on it, but we know we kind of can own that space still. Meanwhile, Microsoft and Sony have basically gone, let's make our things, like PCs essentially in the architecture, so a developer can release on the PC and our two consoles, and we're just going to fight that war over there. Yeah. And it's kind of worked for everybody. It's kept basically these three pillars alive. And honestly, I don't, as much as even I have issues with Sony, I do not want to see any of the three die, because it'd be bad for the ecosystem.
Exactly. The way they have balanced it, like, they fight with each other, who's going to win this round, guys, but they work together, and like, who's enriched? Like, we are.
Yep. Oh yeah, we benefit from it all.
Anyway, I think it's time to move on from this point now. We've had a good discussion, and now we finished the question and answer section. Thank you to Nut Train and Mad Coco G for those questions. Now we move on to the second part, what we've been playing and what we've been looking forward to. So basically, just like any one person, if you want to go first, you start talking about, just one game to start, like you've been playing recently that you'd like to talk about.
I can start, I guess. I've been playing way too much Bravely Default 2. Since we were talking about how the Switch is geared towards casual, which it can be, this is very much not a casual game. I beat the game once. I'm going for the other endings, and it's just like, now the game's just unleashing on me and destroying me. So, very fun game. Very good return to classic role-playing games. Very hard.
Did you play the first one?
I played the first two, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was a fan of the series, so I mean, honestly, I don't pay attention to Square Enix except for like Theater Rhythm stuff or Bravely Default stuff these days. So
Oh, you got to play
It's fun.
Octopath. If you like this stuff, you got to play Octopath.
I do have Octopath. I just haven't beaten it yet. I get distracted way too easily. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. If it's one of the few exclusives, I'd say you need to get a Switch for if you like role playing games at all. So,
Okay. Anyone else have any games they'd like to talk about?
Sure.
Chris.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Chris can go first.
I'm reviewing Doctor Who: The Lonely Assassin for mobile and PC. Or this is the Steam version, but yeah, and it's surprisingly good if you're a Doctor Who fan. This is probably the best Doctor Who story adaptation ever made for the basic video game. And it's really creepy because if you follow Doctor Who whatsoever, the Weeping Angels are always like one of my favorite villains. This is like a really perfect found cell phone adaptation. And what I mean by found cell phone, it's like, you know how they have those found footage movies? Like those, it's the same concept, except it's a phone. And as you slowly unlock and try different puzzles and figure this mystery out for some of the Doctor's companions and stuff, you kind of realize the Weeping Angels are the secret ghosty type villains. And if you don't solve this puzzle, all the world is going to end. And shit. That's the whole concept. It's brilliant. It's a lot of fun. If you're a Doctor Who fan, definitely buy it. It's really cheap. It's like $3 or $5. It's amazing. That's pretty much the whole review that I'm going to write about.
Right, okay, well, no need to read the review. Just kidding. Please read Chris's review, please.
You know what? Just transcribe this. This is the review.
Yes. Anyway, consider that a sneak peek, folks. You'll have to come back later to the website and read it. Anyway, yeah, I just like to get my 2 cents in. Because a rather amusing thing happened to me lately. Who's familiar with the Super Seducer series of games? Yes.
I had to review the second one for another site.
I've had to review all of them for this site.
I know. Because you get the bad games. That's the deal.
Now, on that note, recently I reviewed Super Seducer 3. It was not very good. Spoiler alert.
3 of them? Good lord.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how people keep giving him money or where he finds the money. Like does he like dig up buried treasure or something? I don't know.
Dating coaches make so much money.
That's true. It is kind of a cult-like thing. Hey guys, just come to my seminar. Just $1,000 for the seminar, and you can have a great marriage or whatever. Anyway. So rather amusingly, in the game, I got the heavily censored version, the pre-release version. And there's a scene where, so Rich is giving advice. He's the main character. He's saying, to attract women, do X, Y, and Z. And just to kind of visually illustrate what he's talking about, there's loads of scantily clad women around him, just sort of twirling their hair, that kind of thing. And they're all kind of censored because it's all scantily clad. It's all blurred out. And I made a joke. It was like going into a 19th century brothel after laser eye surgery gone horribly wrong.
Wow.
And yes, after the review was published, Richard himself took issue with that on Twitter. He tweeted me directly to say, I don't think it's nice to call the girls prostitutes. That's poor form. I mean, this is the guy who will advise you, if you see a woman in the street, stand directly in front of her and put your arms out so she can't get around you. I'm the one showing poor form here. And the other thing is, there's a scene in the game where he offers a woman money for sex. And she's like, why are you saying this to me? Do you think you could buy me? What's going on? Yeah, I's just saying, love. If you take this big stack of cash, we can have a little boom boom fun time. You know what I mean? Because he's from South London. It's just like, I mean, so hang on a minute. You're going to have a go at me for making that joke, but you do these kind of things yourself. I think that's a little bit funny. But we love Richard. He keeps giving these games for me to make fun of. So God bless him.
He keeps giving them. Well, okay, so I've said this before. I worked for a dating coach long time ago. I was a ghostwriter for him and did his articles. They, first of all, make a lot of money. So there's, that's why he's getting the money to keep making these. But there was something that he always said, which is, it is better that they talk poorly behind your back. Or if they talk behind your back, at least they're talking about you, right? Like, the only thing worse than people talking behind your back is people not talking about you at all. So they take negative attention, and that's positive for them. So that's why you keep getting these games.
Apparently. Yeah. I can't. Do you know what the funny thing is? I looked on Metacritic. My review was by far the most generous. By far.
Oh, so that's why you keep getting these
Apparently,
games.
yes, of course. I gave it like a 2 out of 5, and that was the best score. Another review, I'm more or less quoting this verbatim. It says, "The only reason why I'm giving this 1 out of 10 is that our system doesn't have a 0 out of 10.
Okay, listen, from a game perspective, to be fair, I played the second one. It was bug-free. There was a tank. It was interesting.
Yes, it was the best one. I said this in my review. So in the opening scene of Super Seducer 3, Richard Lorena is wearing like Jedi-like robes like Star Wars. The second Super Seducer is like The Empire Strikes Back, the best one. And the third one is like, Return of the Jedi. Not quite so good. But
yeah, so for reference, everyone else, it's an FMV game, so it's like full video. And in the second one, he rolls up to like a polo-ish like type brunch, like it's very like well-to-do. Rolls up in a tank and pops out of the tank and sits down and starts chatting up a girl as she's eating brunch. And that is the opening of this game. There's a grandma who falls down. That's all I remember.
A guy is so amazed and shocked to see Richard, he pours tea over himself.
So, those games.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Just to kind of like contrast that. The second game he starts riding up on a tank. The third game he's at an almost abandoned supermarket. That's COVID for you. Oh God. But anyway, yes. That's enough about Richard LaRuina. Richard LaRuina will be back. He always comes back.
He can't get enough of you.
Whenever you think he's gone forever, he just appears again. He's like Thanos. Anyway, right. Okay. Anybody else have any games they'd like to talk about?
Sure, I'll actually take the branch you literally just gave me, and so on the topic of adult-ish games, in my case, it is an 18+ game. I did recently review AU Senki Gold, which if you really want an in-depth, comprehensive review, go take a look at it. It's 2 pages long, is what I'll say.
5,000 words.
Yep.
Closer to 6.
Oh, okay.
6,000.
Yeah, and a lot of people were like, "Wait a second, why is that so long?" And really, to give you, if you're not familiar with my writing style, I do break things down into subjects. So we do cover, the graphics, the sound, etc. So, look, I know. I try to write these. So if you like, I don't care about the graphics. Tell me about the characters. Fine, go find the character section. Just read that. I'm fine with that. I try to write. I know I'm a verbose writer, but I try and cover this in a way that the developers will read this because they have to, and then they will take that feedback and hopefully make a better game. The game itself is pretty good. I gave it a 4 out of 5, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's basically a strategy RPG / visual novel where the plot basically is you're this dude who wakes up on the shores of a country called Zepang. Masamune Date finds you and basically declares you are her older brother now. younger brother, I believe. And now basically at that point, you're going to conquer the world, and she's going to make you a king because this is AU Senki. The key thing with AU Senki in general is that all the characters are historical figures. So, like, say, Christopher Columbus, Captain Cook, Napoleon, Marie Antoinette, which this one doesn't make as much sense, but it's like they're all female. So Marie Antoinette makes sense, but yeah, Columbus is a girl. Marie Dante's female.
Lu Bu, right?
I'm sorry?
Isn't Lu Bu in it as well?
Lu Bu is in there. There's several different countries that are represented. So you have the Taika Empire, which is roughly China. Australia is represented as a penal colony where you find people from other countries who got sent there.
Yeah,
that's where you find Goemon Ishikawa, funnily enough. You find Vlad Trepes there as well, which that was an interesting choice. But the game itself, like I said, it's very long. I think I was basically playing this thing nonstop for 3 weeks to finish it so I could write the review, and I still haven't 100%ed it. But I hit the credits, so I was like, all right, that's that's good for now. But it's a pretty decent game. It's a long read. So if you like VNs, if you do like my lights being funky, if you're fine with 18+ VNs, then yes, you will be able to romance several of the girls, and many of them have adult scenes. We'll just put it that way. So that's a way to do it. It's supposed to be coming out on Steam, and this is kind of one of the things I'll jump into a little bit of discussion if you want. The Steam version was supposed to launch at the end of February. It's now March 21st, and it's still MIA. And I was just looking at this while we were talking about it, at least through the Steam community page. There's been, and I haven't seen any word from JAST USA, so I'm wondering if it's stuck in Steam approval, and if it might not, even with whatever edits they want to make, if it's one of those games that's just not going to get approved.
But why wouldn't it? I mean, there's so many adult-only games on Steam that are like really explicit, so why would that be an issue?
Yeah, see here, this is the weird thing that because I've written a little bit about this before with another article we did about the expression Amrilato, which was an all-ages Yuri visual novel title, but Steam decided it contained adult content, which my only guess was essentially two things. There was a bath scene where the girls were covered by Steam, but technically they are high school students, so Steam jumped on that, I guess, and tried to go no. The weird thing was, I think it was Good Old Games, which we talked about was owned by CD Projekt Red. They were fine with it. Discord was fine with it. You could buy it from their basically from Manga Gamer's channel in Discord and play it through there. Steam eventually backpedaled on it after some bad press, but it's one of those that I've talked a lot with some of these publishers, when I'm at conventions, etc. And the biggest thing with Steam is there's no consistent method that they seem to use to quantify.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that Steam is incredibly inconsistent. I wrote an article on this a couple of years ago where Steam released this big statement, says from now on anything goes, no matter what it is, no matter if it offends someone or whatever. We're just going to put it up and we're going to leave it up to people. And I remember at the time I wrote an article saying, okay, so can you just kind of clarify? Do you really mean everything? And everyone was just like, "Oh, you bloody idiot!" Like, Steam's just done a great service for us customers and everything. But the same thing keeps happening over and over again. Steam say everything's okay, then nothing's okay. Then maybe it's half okay. Then maybe this is okay. We just lay out some clear, specific guidelines for developers and just stick to them. Stick to them.
Yeah, the problem we run into, especially, it seems to affect a lot more of the Japanese developed VNs, and there's a whole tangent we could get into, but I'll try and summarize it super quickly. In Steam's defense, and I'm just going to explain this to some people who might not know it, they are bound by three major things. One is United States law based on depiction of possibly minors. We'll get to that in a minute. Two is Washington state law, because they are actually based in Washington. So you have to remember that it's not just the federal law, but whatever state and local laws come into effect. And the third, credit card processors. And that's the actual big one, because that's the thing that can screw you over. I used to work in the hospitality industry. the credit card industry takes a larger cut of those sales because they're high risk transaction. When you get into adult type content, those are also considered high risk for fraud because people don't necessarily want it seen on their credit card statements, and sometimes it does get stolen. So they take a higher percentage of the initial transaction fees. So what happens is that way they cover their losses if they have to, refund stuff, etc. Which sucks for the businesses who have to use this. That's why it's one of those when you see stuff like on Manga Gamer or Jazz and they seem a little expensive, and we talk about basically the porn tax or the 18 plus tax, that's kind of really what it is. They have to cover those kind of built-in back-end charges. The problem you run into with the Japanese stuff is that there is the age of consent issue, which it depends depends on the prefecture, but in general people would say it's 16. And when they localize these games, obviously that's not going to fly in the most rest of the world, so they age them up to 18, which some people still don't think is right. I kind of go, look, if 16 is culturally what's okay for them, it's the same essentially if we write a story about an 18-year-old here. Just up them by 2 years. Certain things why everyone's 18 years old in high school and they're all apparently in different classes somehow isn't going to make sense. But you know what? For the sake of the story, we'll just kind of go with this. But there are people out there who that still makes them really uncomfortable. And there are legitimately good reasons for that. Don't get me wrong. But then you go one step further and like, okay, what about the depiction of characters who just look young, despite the fact that,
He's actually a 9,000-year-old dragon,
Yeah, like stuff like that. I mean, even Ayusenki has a couple of characters like that, like Benkei. Benkei is, she can kick your ass, but she's adorable. You want to give her a head pat every so often. And like the relationship she has with Chihaya is very cute. But that's one of those. But there is a scene with her later on in the game because she's one of the girls that you can end up romancing. The scene is handled, I think, perfectly fine. I've seen things that have been handled far, far worse. But it's this kind of mentality and stuff that's also affected games like Maiden of Michaels, which Manga Gamer released a couple of years ago, was on Steam, and then got pulled because someone. Basically, I wrote in another article about this for a different site, but literally, I'm not even kidding. There's a dude on Steam who submitted it for review, basically to have them pull the game and complain that the content was illegal in his country, which I think was Canada. But the other thing he said is because, it's a depiction of sexuality with minors, etc. In the Steam community page, he then went on to basically kind of troll everyone and was even going as far as to say, well, technically, they're lesbians, they can't have sex, it's sodomy, but, yeah, like this is like, here's the problem, though. These are the kinds of people that can get these games pulled from Steam sometimes. You have people who they do get offended by the stuff and they really go out there, and Steam's had to deal with a lot of stuff, and I think they've just kind of, this whole combination of stuff, of things have kind of had them. When it comes to the Japanese side of stuff, like Manga Gamer, Jast, they kind of just put the brakes on. They're like, look, I don't know if they keep getting the same content reviewer, or they just go, we just don't want to deal with this. And they just, a lot of times they won't approve it, despite other adult content being on the store. Josh, did you have a hand up there for a second?
Oh, no.
I just wanted to, because I know I'm been going on, but yeah, it's a complex situation. It really frustrates me, as you can probably tell, but there's also not a good answer, if that makes sense.
Do you know what I think is very funny here is that, you are trying to kind of grapple with, why these games are censored the way they are. And, you're trying to find out the actual reasons, but there is, of course, a section. There's always people in the comments who think, oh, it's you game journalist SJWs who are doing it, and it's just, god damn it.
No, like I am the person who, like, it's weird because, like, my family and background, if they knew some of the stuff the 18 plus stuff I reviewed, they'd be like, what are you doing? But one of the reasons I like covering these titles is because someone should. If they're garbage, fine, we'll write an honest review, re-rate them as garbage, and guess what? People will stop hopefully buying them, or the developers will get better. But a lot of these games do have good elements, and You even go into basically franchises that have been born from this 18 plus genre. The Fate series, the Grisaya series, Uta Watarumono, those
Oh
all
my gosh.
came from 18 plus VNs. So
Sorry,
there is they do have a thing. But Tatiana, do you have any kind of thoughts on this or experience?
I worked on Uta Watarumono, actually,
Oh.
Mask of Deception, when I spent some time with Atlas back in 2016. Great game, but we did cut out quite a few things from there. I was kind of bummed, actually, because some of the stuff I felt was totally okay, but then at the same time it was bring it over to the West, and this is not exactly okay. We had a scene in particular where one of our characters, she is known as a scion there, and she's kind of the daughter of the emperor, and she's supposed to take over this kingdom, but she is frozen in time, or at least her body is. So she still looks like a 10 or 11-year-old despite being a couple thousand years old.
Yep.
And there's a scene in there from her tutor, who's supposed to be also one of her bodyguards, where she gets spanked, but they took it out for the version that they actually released here. We actually got to see what the real scene looks like, and it's just her pants down while she's getting spanked over her tutor's lap. But they felt, despite her being of age, because she still looks like a child, they had to take that out because they considered it as not only borderline child pornography, but also as abuse of a minor, and it just wasn't okay. But I was kind of bummed because it was like, so you're really not seeing anything, and it's not like no one really knows what spanking is. It's pretty typical child discipline, at least for some millennials that grew up with that. I grew up with it, and it was normal. It wasn't a big deal like it is now. And then there were a couple other scenes where some of the men, they were inebriated, they drank after a big battle, and they couldn't show that bit because they started getting a little bit too wild, even though everybody still had a towel on. It was just convenient steam covering everything. But it was, I just felt when we got told, okay, yeah, you guys get to see this, but we're actually going to be playing the official version now, and it's going to look like this. A lot of us were disappointed because we felt that when they were doing all the censoring, it was overcompensating. And it was kind of to the point where it was distracting. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Tokyo Ghoul, all of those censoring slashes every time there was something that was overly violent. It was almost like that with Uta Watarumono, Mask of Deception, but almost to the point where it was like, okay, we get all the talking and all the dialogue at the bottom, but then everything's just a black screen. And that's almost very disengaging for a lot of players, because it's like, this is heavily narrated. We kind of want to see pictures, because with every 6 chapters that we're reading through, then we get the occasional battle, and then we get thrown back into the story again. So don't take us away from what we should be seeing, but we don't get to make that choice when we work on the game. So it's kind of a bummer. So we feel like we're missing out, and then when I got to play the Japanese version, I was like, it isn't bad though. Even though, I don't know, it's just, Japan lets a lot of stuff go by, but that's also because culturally it's totally okay over there. So here we are.
I was gonna say, having I worked at Bandai, but in the toy division, and having, being on the Western side, which of a Japanese company, which I'm sure you can relate to, it was like, you can see why certain cultural changes are being made. You can see why certain cultural things happen there. The frustrating part was, you could probably do some things that would work. Like you pointed out, it's completely black. Why couldn't we ask for a redraw of a scene? Or why couldn't we have it's conveniently placed steam. Why can't we add a towel? Right. But there, for some reason, there is no communication from the Western side to the back to the Eastern side. It is so hard. And you kind of go like, I spent my whole year at Bandai going, I don't know why I'm here, because you have me doing all these reports and saying that this is the research, that this will work here in the West. And then you go, thanks, and put the report aside and never listen to it. Like, and then you go, why doesn't it work in the West? And you're like, I'm telling you why. Please listen.
Really bad part. Yeah, because a lot of the times when we asked for small edits and things and telling them, hey, like, this isn't exactly, appropriate over here in the States. Can we change it to this? A lot of times, at least Atlas over in Japan, they completely ignored us, or they would say things like, well, we don't want you to change it at all. Just leave it as it is, because they like to keep it as pure as possible, right? We're not going out of our way to make it a completely different game. We want to give, our consumers and the people that are really hardcore about that brand to get as close to the original as possible. If not, nothing changed, right? No problem. Nice was the same way. I had a friend that worked at Nice, and they had to basically copy paste everything, and they just weren't allowed to even change a few words that we knew over in the States that we were going to be completely unfamiliar with. But we didn't want it to be a completely different sentence either. And that was kind of the issue, is back and forth. It was, we can't change anything unless we have permission. And then once we talk to them, they either never get back to us, or they get back to us weeks later, and then we have to push the release date, and it sucks because then we have to tell everybody else on a live stream, hey, this is what's going on. That's what happened when Persona 5 got pushed from the original February date to April, and people were outraged. People went crazy over that, and it's not us, you guys, at all. It's Japan telling us, no, you guys cannot change that. We're not ready, and that's all that you got to do. But
oh yeah, no, I've been.
Isn't it? It's like so embarrassing.
Go ahead.
It's embarrassing that this is a medium where a big majority of people are adult gamers. Why is it that we're still putting Steam on genitals? Like, I don't understand. Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, we're adults. We want our entertainment. Do we really need to have Steam over certain body parts? That, oh, thank God, I'm protected from that. Like, this is video games. Come on. Like, Hollywood, they can show whatever they want, and nobody really attacks them. But for some reason, gaming is still attacked. I don't understand people associate gaming with children, but
yes,
it's just got to end sometime.
I mean, yes and no. Like, in some like Hollywood movies, you could see like horrific violence. Somebody getting beheaded or chopped in half or whatever. But there are still certain things happening, you can't show on like a Hollywood movie, or at least you probably won't see.
But I can't agree with that, because True Blood got away with a lot of stuff.
A lot.
Shameless
True
too.
Blood they really pushed the envelope to the point of ripping it in half. And a lot of people, they still loved it. And then another big example, Game of Thrones got away with a lot of stuff.
HBO was
had to change it over, and they were like, okay, if you want to see it, you got to be over on HBO. And people they were like, okay, fine, we'll pay the extra for it. And then it got to the point where they had invented what was it, exposition, during sex scenes, and that was, you got most of the big major points while characters were getting involved with each other that way. And it wasn't so much as, yeah, I'm just here for the plot. No, it was, no, I'm really here for the plot, and that stuff is just, it comes with the package.
I think my kind of, I think what I'm more broadly trying to say, I just got a little sidetrack, is that there is a broader, I think, hypocrisy around sex and violence in the media. I mean, I think it is changing more recently now. You can see that you can get away with more nudity now. But it is absurd that anyone would be offended by a naked body but not be offended by somebody getting decapitated or sawn in half or
Right.
shot or
Well,
tortured.
keep in
Yeah.
mind, though, I mean, Francis wrote an article recently about this where Resident Evil was getting edited in Japan, censored heavily for violence.
Oh,
Yet you get all the, you can get all the violent stuff you want here. I can play as many games as I want, cutting people's heads off. But as far as like the sex stuff that you say, like it's all censored. Versus in Japan, sex stuff is not as censored. It's more freely talked about, more freely, or not even talked about, but more like just in their media. But violence? Mm-mm.
No, it's one of those things that Ciro is very strict with a lot of stuff, and that's actually why I remember to even tie this to even point out Japan in a censoring aspect. There was, I forget which one, but one of the Sword Art games had to be recalled because they had to touch up a scene to lower the rating because they wanted it to be in this Ciro rating. And it was just like a little too risque, so it pushed it one up. And they're like, oh, crud, we can't do that. So, Ciro's really kind of weird with this stuff, but violence is a big thing where it's just, no, it's a hard no for them. Even with stuff that gets, brought over from that's Western developed and gets brought to Japan, it's still, censored. But it's like to kind of go back to a little bit with the sexuality and stuff. It's like sex can be used as a storytelling vehicle. It really can, and sometimes it can help to show the relationship between two people and how it develops. A great example, I just think he does a good job of that. I think with developing Chihiya's character and how he works with the other characters. But like, has anyone ever heard of Kindred Spirits on the Roof?
No.
No, it is.
No.
It's a Josh. I know you have because you edited the review I did for that.
I edited it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a game that actually did get pulled from Steam, and people were pissed about it. It was one of the first 18+ games on there. It was by Manga Gamer published it. But basically, it takes place at a all-girls high school, and the idea is there's this girl ends up being able to see these two ghosts. And the thing is, they have a desire. They want to turn it into what they call a Yuritopia. Well, Yuri is a subgenre of, Japanese subgenre where basically it deals with girl-girl relationships, so lesbian relationships, etc. And the whole thing, the idea of the game is that as you put together these different couples and help them solve their things, it actually layers. So like, for example, the first one's just trying to get them together. The second one's more developing those feelings. But as you go, each couple kind of layers on each other to the point where the last couple of one's a teacher and student, which that obviously, there's some moral issues with that. But the game actually does a smart thing and acknowledges there's the moral issues with it. So at the end, you kind of actually almost root for them because they're like, no, they're not being, this teacher's not, being predatory on the student. In fact, the way, I don't want to give anything of how they resolve it away, but it's one of those, they acknowledge it. They kind of use it as a storytelling vehicle, and you do get the feeling that these people genuinely care about each other. But then, like, you get to the last couple, and they've already been in a relationship, but they're almost at their breaking point, and it's trying to put it back together. The game does have its 18+ scenes, and they are quite beautiful, I think, and they're done, like I said, to advance the characters and the story and to kind of show these people have hit a certain milestone in their relationship, etc. This was one of the things that got taken down on Steam, and when it did, even mainstream media kind of picked up on it because it was a big LGBTQ+ game. And it was, like I said, one of the first ones on Steam in this way, and so that they quickly reversed course on that. And that was one of actually, the good resolutions in that case. But to also speak to Tatiana's point earlier about this editing stuff, I remember Criminal Girls on the Vita. I love that game. I think it's a very divisive game for some people because of some BDSM type elements, but the underlying idea is it's a story of trusting people and learning how to trust. And I think I understand why Lisa had to make some edits to the game, including the gratuitous pink smoke and taking out the vocal track for those scenes.
Yeah.
I'm glad we at least got the game. I'm glad I played it. I think that they could have done a couple of different things, but it's one of those where I'm sure the localizers, the people who are actually trying to bring the game to us, I'm sure their hands were tied it's never those people's decisions. It's always someone higher up or Japan that's like, we can't do this, and unfortunately, and I think that's I'll wrap it up with this. That's a point sometimes I think as gamers we forget. We get mad at the company, which is I think is fine or upset. But you have to remember there are actual people there who have to read like your comments, your tweets, etc. And when I've seen so many negative comments that are just like, dude, you do not, I haven't worked hospitality for 11 years. You know, that can ruin your day. That's one reason why even like in my, I got annoyed with JAST USA about the patching issue. That there was an issue with AU Senki where I couldn't actually complete a certain thing because the initial 1.0 release was bugged. And so there was a patch for 1.01 that came out, and I had no idea. It was only through doing due diligence before the review that I figured that out. But it's like I was annoyed with that, and I do kind of poke that out, you know, in the review. But it's like I'm also trying not to be a jerk about it because I know it's there are things they can fix, but you know, don't be for lack of a better term, just don't be a dick.
Yeah. I want to hear what Mike has been playing before because I know he has to leave soon.
Okay.
But I just want to say one thing. And that's that, you know, I do community management, I do marketing for our game, and I've been doing it since 2018. We have had I don't know what it is about I think it's game like a lot of gamers are like this, but I want to say that there is a specific subset in mobile gaming a lot that we see where people get unnecessarily not only angry but to the point of harassing, where I have had messages come in through our game where they're like, you know, I demand a refund because XYZ, and I'm like, you know, okay, I'm sorry, we can't give you a refund because iTunes literally does not allow developers to give you refunds. It just does not work that way. I, as a developer, cannot issue a refund on an iPhone. You have to go to iTunes. And this one person said, yeah, I know, I work for Apple. I just want you to give me free stuff. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. You've been harassing me. And for 6 months, he sent us messages, you know, go fuck yourself. I hope you die. I hope you get cancer. I hope your kids are Trump voters. Like everything. Everything. That was the nicest one.
My God.
I hope your kids
That's
are Trump
exhausting.
voters.
How old is he going to
6
be by
months.
then?
I don't know. I don't know. But he followed us for 6 months. That so much that we had to keep like a file on him in case he like, because he was like, I'm gonna
Jeez.
find you, like I'm gonna come to your office, like, and I'm like, I thought this is a Canadian, guys, like I thought Canadians are supposed to be nice, like
Yeah.
you know, like it was awful, and I wish this was an isolated event. This was the worst event. We've had people send us what is it, Google Pay requests or whatever, like straight up just send us in our email, like give me $100. Like people are mean.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of indie companies, like there are big companies like big video game companies, but keep in mind even Nintendo, one of the biggest, has around 5,000 employees. It seems like a bigger company. That's a lot of people, but that's not a massive amount of people, right? That's not a massive company. That is a big, but not a massive. My company is, at the time that I was doing all this, was 5 people. And all the people who were reading this was one person, me. So yeah, I became a punching bag. So it's not cool. Like now the person who reads them, she's the punching bag. It's just like, it's not cool. So yeah,
No.
if it's just the worst feeling.
Yeah, no, and I'll say this right for the record. It does, and this is the last thing I'll say. It does not matter which side of the argument you are. I don't care if you know, like these types of games, whatever, or against whatever. If you're going to go that far, no, your point's invalid just outright. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter where you come from. But there is no excuse for, especially, you know, threatening people and, you know, harassing them. Just no. If you have a point to make, and working in customer service, I get when people are upset at a situation, and as long as it's not at me, I'm fine. I get it. You know, you're upset, you're venting. Let's work through this. And even as a gamer, I'm upset. I might vent. But I want you to work with me to make a better product. that's
Mhm.
fine. But when you get to the point where it becomes personal, that's no.
Mhm.
If that being said, hi Mike, do you have stuff to talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. How do I follow that? That was good conversation, though. That was awesome. But yeah, what have I been playing? I'm like late to everything because I have a 10-year-old and she takes up all my time. But which is the reason why I have to go soon because we're watching Detective Pikachu tonight.
Aw.
So that should be
Nice.
fun.
Aw.
Yeah. But yeah, I finally, speaking of being late to everything, I finally got into playing Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PlayStation 5. My first few months with the PS5 was mostly dedicated to Demon Souls. But Spider-Man is awesome. Like I put it down at first. I played it for a few minutes, and I did a couple of those like, you know, the introductory missions, and you're like, oh, do I really want to go through all this? And then they're like, hey, go from this building into this building and find a little piece of memorabilia, and we'll give you some experience points. And I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do all this, so I put it down for a month. I picked it up again last weekend, and it's like really weird. I don't know if it's like a certain state I'm in now, but like the beginning of the game is like emotional, and I like felt a tear coming out yesterday. I'm like, what is going on? I'm playing Spider-Man for the PlayStation 5 and I have a tear rolling down my eye. Is something wrong? But yeah, everything you've read about it, like with the fidelity mode and the light tracing, it looks beautiful. It's a really, really beautiful looking game, and story is just as I'm only at like 3 hours in, but the story is just as beautiful as the graphics are. Like it's a really touching story with Miles and, you know, his dad passing away and him, you know, trying to help his mom, but the typical Spider-Man story where as a teenage kid he's also trying to deal with all his teenage stuff and everything too, and growing up faster than he really should have to. Have any of you guys played it yet or had a chance to dive into it?
I know Christian has.
I reviewed it for us.
Oh, you have? Oh,
a month
awesome.
ago, or a month and a half ago. Yeah, it's a fantastic game. I wholeheartedly agree with all your points.
Yeah, I love it so far, but hopefully I get more time to jump into it and finish it. But yeah, other than that, I've been playing like old stuff. For those that have been following the site for 5 years or so now, I took a break for a while to write for Pat Country's Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the Super Nintendo Library, and now we're working on the sequel to that, which is the Guide to the Nintendo 64 Library.
Nice.
So,
would you happen to
you
have
guys
a copy of this book you could show me? If
Why,
anyone's
yes, I would.
interested?
Here it is right here.
So
You can get this
beautiful.
on
That's
Amazon or countrycodeproductions.com, or yeah, there's a bunch of places where you can get that.
Well, thank you for doing that for me. I had to ask completely spontaneously, not planned in advance or anything. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like super proud of that, and a couple. Also Brett Weiss, who's into the retro community, he had another Nintendo book that came out last month that you can get in Target, and I have a bunch of write-ups in that one too. So if you have a chance and you're at Target one day and in the book section, take a look at the NES Omnibus. That's a really good book too. But yeah, so back to the Nintendo 64. I don't know if you guys noticed, but that console cannot be emulated properly still to this day, even though it's as old as it is. The emulation is terrible. So, and since we're doing this book and we got to get all the screenshots for it, emulating is becoming problematic. I've personally been doing is getting all the screenshots that I can, and then I'll go and I still have my Nintendo 64 hooked up to my CRT, so I'll just get it the screenshots that I need to get, and then I'll jump in and play it on the actual console. That way I get like a feeling for the way the game is supposed to play. But right now I'm doing Vigilante 8.
Ooh,
Played Glover. I never played it as a kid growing up, so I was always a Twisted Metal guy. But Vigilante 8 is another one of those vehicular combat games, and it's really, really well done. The characters are all very interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a fun game, and a couple other ones that I only got 5 more games on my list to do. I've completed 20 so far. The book should be finished this summer, so be able to fit in stores probably by Christmas, hopefully.
Is by chance Hey You Pikachu in there?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have every single game from A to Z, and even
perfect.
Japanese games.
Okay,
Yeah,
I need this book.
I'll let you know when it's out.
Yes.
One that I have on my list that I haven't done yet is it's a game that only came out in Japan called Tetris 64. And the interesting thing about that game is, and I don't know how I'm going to review this, but it came with a like a heart monitor that you would plug into the console, and you would connect to your finger. And while you were playing Tetris, if your heart rate registered higher, it would give you like certain pieces that kind of like lower your heart rate down. Like you'll get more of the long line pieces that everybody loves and that kind of stuff. And if your heart rate got low, it will give you a bunch of like pieces that you probably aren't going to need. So it sounds really interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, who knew that something like that came out back then? I mean, leave it to Nintendo,
Who said
right?
the N64 peripherals were superfluous? I mean,
Well, they were also talking
I
about
loved
releasing
the-
something like that for the Wii U back in the day, like a heart
The Wii.
monitor. But
Yeah,
was
for
it the Wii? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess they decided against it.
talking about peripherals, I mean, you might. Okay, is this just me, or did you have at least one occasion where the Rumble Pack was shaking so hard it shook itself out of the controller, fell on the floor? Ah!
I believe when the Star Fox 64 came out, that came with a Rumble Pack at
Yes, it
first.
did.
And I remember the day I got that and I brought it home and I'm like, I can't believe this is amazing. And I popped it in and I don't think it fell out of my hand, but it was definitely, a brand new experience at the time. It was really cool.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I mean, that's the thing.
And now
It
Rumble
didn't-
Packs are just like
it
nothing.
didn't fall out of my hand. The Rumble Pack shot out of the controller like a cannon.
Really?
Yeah, it did. I
guess it could do that because they clip in.
Free.
What games were you playing?
Yeah, I think I was probably playing the same. It was probably
Criminal Girls.
Star Fox, which was known as Lilac Wars in Europe for some stupid copyright reason. I don't know. Maybe there was a Dutch movie called Star Fox that was really famous. Who knows? Anyway,
Really? It was called Lilac?
Yep.
Yes, it was called Lilac Wars, and like I remember just reading
I didn't
about
know
it in
that.
the magazines. Oh, Star Fox coming out. Is that Lilac Wars? What? What's Lilac Wars? It's not the catchiest title, but hey, it was basically the same game with a different name. So hey. Anyway, yes. Yes. Is that everyone? Has everyone had a quick go with games that they've been playing?
No, I haven't gone
The
yet.
ladies need to tell their games.
Yeah, and yeah.
Heather, you should go first.
Oh no. I've talked so much. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, let me see. So I I guess could say that I'm pretty much neck deep in Final Fantasy 14 right now. I got into it last August? No, last April. So that was around the time that, well, for some people were either getting laid off or their hours were getting reduced. I had the latter, where it got to the point where I was working only one day a week, and it was terrible. I hated it, but I got through a lot of games. And then with enough begging from a couple of friends, I finally just decided, okay, fine, I'll try out 14, see what it's about. I love the game. Big surprise. I'm a huge Final Fantasy buff. I'll blurt out trivia any other day. But the thing about 14 that really got me, I think, honestly, has been just being able to see how many different references I've been able to point out and really educate a couple of my other friends that aren't really too deeply into it. I absolutely love how gorgeous the game looks and all of the different CGs, and I'm really looking forward to Endwalker that's coming out this fall, and even the new patch that's coming out in April. So I absolutely love that game to death. I play a Viera in there from the Rava clan, so I just look like the same Vieras from Final Fantasy 12 that live in the Golden Temple. I main a summoner, but I actually have mastery of one of each class, with the exception of physical range DPS. I'm kind of on the fence between picking either starting completely over with an archer and going into a bard, or picking a machinist. Otherwise, I've just really been like pretty much farming that game to hell, just like figuring out what I want to do and how I want all my different glamours to look, and now, like, because I've been PC-less for a little while. I have been kind of budgeting, putting together, like trying to get a PC so that I can actually play the PC version of 14 and maybe even start streaming again, because I used to originally stream League of Legends. God, that was so many years ago, but I retired from that game because holy moly, the community is just so toxic. I cannot handle people that play. I just can't. Um, you know, so I'm kind of retired from there. But 14 has really just kind of been my focus. And then other than that one, I kind of dove back into some old stomping grounds. I picked up Romancing Saga 3, and that game has been super amazing. I actually got to play a fan translation over 10 years ago when there was no localization in sight for that game. And I loved it and fell in love with it like so deeply, to the point where I just wanted to play every single one of the characters and see what they were all about. So I have that one. But yeah, 14's just kind of been like my focus, where when I get home from work, that's like one of the first things that I do. I just really want to get in there and like figure out what I'm doing, and I have a super active free company, and we love to do the like treasure maps every Sunday, and we love to do like Eden stuff every week together. So it's been really fun, and I got to witness my first wedding a couple months ago, which was awesome, and just like be a part of like that super friendly community. I think that was like the big thing that really attracted me, is that there were so many people that were so helpful and really just going out of their way to just like help teach you, even if you were like dead and you're not a part of their party for like alliance raids, they would pick you up anyway. And I loved that. It was just like, dang, I missed out on this so much. And I think one of the bigger reasons that I didn't get into an MMO for so long was just because I like, the community was just terrible from League of Legends, and then the community was terrible from Ragnarok Online. And I played 8 years of Ragnarok Online, so I really knew a thing or two about like what it meant to even like be a mod on there. And it was just, I kind of missed that a little bit, and then to get that connection back in a series that I am just so in love with, like from playing Final Fantasy VI for the first time to really like getting deep into 7 last year when I was only working so little. It only took me less than a month to really get through 7, and then to even like almost max out everything. I think I'm 1 trophy short of that game. And
Oh,
I
wow.
purposely stopped it because I didn't want to finish it.
Do that
so
all the
quickly, and then
time.
be
Yep.
like, oh man,
Mhm.
so I'm like slogging through hard mode, right? And just trying to pick up all of the missing volumes and stuff. And everybody's already at 50. I already beat Ultima Weapon. Like, I already took care of that. It's just really taking my time. And then I really want to be super. I really want to like get back into Corneo's Mansion. And I remember telling a lot of people, or at least a couple of my friends, yeah, it's actually like some of the stuff really didn't happen, or there was a lot of stuff missing from the original, and they're like, oh, what was that about? And because they never played the original, so I was like, oh, you actually had to go and get like perfume and underwear, and they took that out with the new one. Like, you got to actually spend much more time. You got to go into the honeybee inn instead of just getting a screenshot of it. Versus
wow.
now you have this like fantastical, dance party, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. I loved Andrea and being able to impress him, and then you get a really nice dress. But playing the original, it was so much darker, really seeing like that side of prostitution and stuff, and going into like the bathhouse, like all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, 14's kind of been at the forefront for me, and I cannot wait for the new Sage class that's coming out. I'm really looking forward to it. And usually I'm not a support person. I love to be DPS. Now I'm starting to get into tanks, which is kind of weird because I would almost never play a tank in League of Legends, but playing a tank here is so, so different. And I love it. I actually love playing a gunbreaker in particular, because it's such a busy class. I don't really like to just kind of stand there and just soak up damage. I'd rather just attract all of it but still do damage too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a friend, he told me Gunbreaker is kind of the DPS that pretends to be a tank. And I kind of like that description about it. But a lot of people are saying that maybe there's a possibility with Anima that's coming for Endwalker. Maybe the summoners might get something out of it. I hope. I think that might be nice, even though the summoners kind of full with all of the stuff that they have and all of their Eggies and Demi Bahamut and Phoenix. So they already have plenty of summoning stuff, but if we get a piece of Anima, that would be so nice. I mean, I love 10, so why not, right? Out of all of the other summons there, I'm glad that they picked Anima, definitely.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at, is 14, I'm on that like all the time, every day. And once I get my PC together, I'm going to start streaming that and just kind of go hog wild with it.
All right. Shall we just Heather then to go, I think, right?
Yeah. So I won't take up too much because I've already spoken so much, but I will say that I basically don't play a lot of games that aren't what I'm reviewing.
Unipop, yeah.
And that is because, well, okay, that's an exception because I was going to get into that. But because it's one of those things where you like your eyes are hungrier than your stomach type thing, where it's like you see something and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get, that's me with games. And I end up getting 6 or 7 games when I'm like, okay, I actually got to play these. So that's why I just basically play what I review. I usually have 6 games at a time. With that being said, I also watch a lot of Markiplier while I'm working, and he played 2 games back to back. One is Honey Pop 2, which just came out in February, and then At Dead of Night, which came out, I want to say, in December of last year. It was the end of last year. Oh, Mike left.
Oh, bye, Mike.
Yeah. Mike.
But so those are the 2 games I've played, plus one I've been reviewing called Nocia, which I just finished. And out of all the 3, I think we know what Honey Pop is. It's the adult-themed match 3 game, which has not only managed to skirt around every Steam issue, apparently, but the stuff you see is gratuitous, and it's a lot. So there's that. It's very fun. If you liked the first one, you will love and hate the second one because it does a lot of cool things, but it is balanced out by a lot of the crappy things they do. That's all. You can read my review. I go into pretty good detail. It's a PG image, so you can. It's safe for work. For Nocia, it is like a single player visual novel version of Among Us, but more complex, prettier, and like more, like I would just say, like it has a really scintillating storyline. If you liked the Among Us gameplay, but you really want to be entertained by a very interesting, intelligent story, Nocia is really it. Like it's probably my game of the year contender so far. And that one's on Switch. It came out March 4th. And then last one is At Dead of Night. This is actually one I would love to talk about a little bit. So it's an FMV game. I usually don't play a lot of these because my opinion is they're not always done the way I want to see them. It's kind of like old Jurassic Park movies versus new Jurassic Park movies when it comes to CGI. Old Jurassic Park movies, they use CGI a little bit. And it's to fill in the gaps when there's a lot of movement and not a lot of... They're not showing you the dinosaur, right? They just kind of show you some movement. Then they have animatronics for the dinosaur if they're going to show you a lot. Then there's the new Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World, I'm sorry, Jurassic World movies, where everything is CGI and everything looks very fake. Like the lighting's off, colors are weird, something's off, doesn't look real. And so that's how I felt with a lot of FMV stuff, is like, it's all too real to the point where you don't even feel like it's a game anymore. This is a movie, I am playing a movie, and I don't feel immersed. I am pressing a button and watching something happen. Some games are okay. Not Safe for Broadcast is one that did it okay. Night Trap is like the example, and it switches between movie screens, in which point it wasn't so bad. Like they did well with the medium. At Dead of Night does this perfectly. This is the best FMV game I've seen, where they blend CGI with FMV to make it look realistic. All of the backgrounds that you're walking through in the hotel, that's CGI to look real. But the characters themselves are FMV. So they'll come out of a hotel room and they'll say something or do something. They'll walk back into a hotel room. It looks real. It makes the hotel look real. It makes it look like you're walking through this hotel. And because of that, it's much more terrifying. It's fucking scary. I can't play it anymore. I am too scared. Because the premise is you're in a hotel, you and your friends are staying there. Turns out the guy who runs it is a psychopathic killer. He's going to kill you. But before you escape, you need to use this ghost to communicator device to talk to the ghosts that live in the hotel. They're trapped there too, to figure out what happened, to like what's the history of this place. And you slowly uncover like why this guy is a psychopath. And then you rescue your friends, you get out, and hopefully you call the police and put an end to that. But like it's terrifying because you'll come up to the doors, like you'll run into these hotel rooms and you'll look outside, you'll look in the keyhole and you'll see the guy walk by, or sometimes he'll like pop up and scare the shit out of you and then walk away. And other times he'll try the door and he'll come in, so you duck into the bathroom and he'll walk by the bathroom and you're peeking through like, oh my God, don't come in. And then he'll walk away. It's so scary. I usually don't play scary games. I'm obsessed with them, but I can't play them. I watch other people play them. Markiplier is my favorite for that because he's better at it, I think, than some others. But this is the one that I had to play. It was just too good. It was like PT level terms of obsession for me.
PT.
Yeah, oh my gosh, PT I became, that was all I did for like a year, was just watch PT videos. But like this is that level of obsession for me. It is so good. It is so well done. So if there's any game that like I could retroactively put on the 2020 like favorites list, like for GOT contenders, it would be it would be this one. Like I would absolutely like change up my list for this. So yeah, that's my please go play at Dead of Night.
Dead of Night, go play it, folks.
May I just do a small addition to that? Apparently, when you hide in the bathroom, sometimes he can outsmart you and close the door, and then you go out of the bathroom, he'll find you anyway. And like, oh my gosh, this AI is amazing. It kind of reminded me of Alien Isolation, in which if you hide for too long, the alien will find you anyway. It what does it do? It evolves around the way that you play. So if you're way too cautious, then it'll pick up on that. If you're making way too much noise or you're running around and you're not crawling and taking your time, it'll pick up on that too. And it'll pop up from above you through a vent. It's amazing. That was like one of the things that it reminded me of that I really liked about Dead of Night. So good. So good.
Sounds like Silent Hill Shattered Memories a little bit.
Oh, that's a good one too, actually.
Yeah. I had the same sort of thing. The AI got smart, and it was really, really terrifying. And
No, it's true. It's true though. It's just it's a very smart game in the sense that how it blended CGI and FMV. Like I haven't seen a game do it this well.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah.
I had just one question. Since we're getting towards the wrap-up part now, we've all had our little plugs of games we've been playing. I just have one question for Benny that I forgot to ask earlier.
What I do?
We're getting to that.
Okay.
To paraphrase Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with gender-bent historical figures? Why have we got to have a sexy Christopher Columbus? Why have we got to have a sexy Nobunaga Oda? What do you think the appeal is?
Okay, so with a lot of these, you have to kind of remember that especially if you're right, if you have an interesting idea, say you want to tell this story. Well, I hate to use the added sex sells, but to a degree, that's what some of these developers do think. If they're going to go ahead and make a game, let's take AU Senki, okay? Let's just say all the characters were their normal genders and whatnot. And nowadays, you would probably be able to find a game where you could have a male protagonist and you could basically date, other guys. And I think it would do well. Fortunately, we're seeing more and more of those types of games, the BL, the, LGBTQ stuff, coming out. But especially when you go back into VN history, etc., a lot of times they use those 18 plus elements to kind of sell the game. Like, look, we have an 18 plus game here. You could date these cute girls, or maybe have a relationship with them. But there's a really great underlying story. You can go back to stuff like Saya no Uta, for example, something I haven't played, but we were talking about kind of horror games, etc. That's one that I know some of the big plot twists about it. Just like, oh dear Lord, I've got to play this one of these days when I'm not going to be terrified, because I don't do scary games either, with Corpse Party being kind of the one exception to that. But I think that's where a lot of this stems from. And I'm sure that there's someone far smarter than me goes, well, there's this basically historically it was this, then this, then this. But they do actually do some cool things with it. Yeah, you think he's a good example of the gender bent stuff. Kohime Muso, which Manga Gamer localized the original PC version of that, is another one where it's Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but they're all females. That's a fantastic game with what they do with it. I mean, obviously they take advantage of the fact that you have a male protagonist and they're all girls, so you get to go ahead and, to a degree, pick who you want to, maybe end up with. But
I gotta ask, do you think they're ever going to do one for World War II? Like Stalin Chan and
no, the problem you have there, to be honest, I would say give it 100 years, maybe. It's just one of those things too soon. Because look, Japan uses basically the Sengoku era, to do all sorts of weird things with. It's part of their history.
Can I just say there was actually a dating sim? So the 2016 Republican challenges, Jeb, Donald, all those people who challenged for the Republican nomination. They made a dating simulator about it. Mm-hmm. So like sort of Jeb is like this bushy guy, and like Donald's the spoiled rich kid, and
a lot of that falls into political satire too.
I guess
I would imagine. And so it's like with that's more something modern day that, you could do that, have fun with it. Maybe you have a political message in there as well. Or maybe you're just like, this whole thing, especially for people outside the US, this whole election's absurd, man. What are you people doing? And even us Americans sometimes just go like, this is ridiculous. But, I think the further back you go, the more okay it becomes to play around with the history, genders, whatnot, etc. And sometimes you do get a fascinating, maybe different turn of events where, okay, what if Nobunaga was a woman? What would feudal Japan look like if you had a strong leader like that who was a woman in an era that probably wasn't really all that seen? Do you rewrite the whole world? Like in AU Senki, really, it's like you don't see any leaders that aren't female, and in fact, almost the entire all the military is, for the most part, women. It's really kind of interesting in that aspect. But yeah, like I said, it's a subgenre. It is a trope. It's a thing that people do. It all depends, I think, with like all tropes, how you utilize it. Is it just you can go ahead and have some sexy girls, or do you actually try and develop the characters and tell interesting stories with this idea?
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, like everything. It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Going back to our conversation earlier, if people enjoy it, God bless them. Go for it. It's great. Anyway, so I think we've had a bloody good discussion here. We've touched on a lot of different topics. It's about time to kind of wrap it up now. Time for tubby bye-byes. As Teletubbies used to go. I'm British. Sorry, I have to bring this up.
Pretty sure I don't have my tubby custard yet, so.
Oh, I'm sorry about you. You're going to need the baby son to giggle a bit, then you'll sort of go to sleep. Okay.
Got it.
So, that's a weird show. We are a strange people indeed. Anyway, is there any kind of like little final shout outs or things you'd like to plug before we wrap things up?
Sure. I'll just basically plug something that I started rewatching with some friends. This is Symphogear. It's an anime series. All I'll basically say is it's magical armored girls who are powered through song. It sounds weird, but it's a 12-episode series for the first season, and it's one of my favorite animes of all time. In fact, episode 12 of it is one of my favorite episodes of any anime ever. I'm rewatching it. This is like the third or fourth time I'm rewatching it. It's the first time I'm taking a friend through it, and it's still really well done. And it recently came out on Blu-ray. So you can find seasons 1 and season 2, but if you want to just jump into season 1, you can watch it there, and I believe it's also on Crunchyroll. But there's my recommendation.
Okay. Is that everyone? Or?
I'll just
You have one.
say this isn't really a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm okay. Go
Mine's
ahead.
real quick. I'm just gonna say it's amazing that Maneater is finally coming to the Switch. I hope it plays halfway decently because that looks really fun. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay.
I would totally recommend Jujutsu Kaisen, not because it won Anime of the Year through Crunchyroll, but because that anime is a whole different level of beautiful animation and violence that does not hold back. And that was definitely one of the big things that really attracted me to that anime. I love to watch it. Every single new episode every week with my husband. So we're super into that. And normally we like to watch kind of like our own animes. Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the ones that we definitely have in common. It's so good. So good. So I totally recommend anybody who hasn't already seen it to definitely watch it. It is hilarious and so good as far as storytelling goes without giving too much away, even though we get bits and pieces of new episodes that show up for like maybe 30 seconds right at the end of the current episode that we're watching. So definitely that one. Please watch that one.
Okay. Heather's got one quick. Heather and Chris, go on.
Go ahead, Christian.
Oh, okay. I was going to recommend something that a little indie darling called The Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's made by a company called Disney. And we'll be covering episodes every week by yours truly. Please check them out, read them. And yeah, that's it.
Chris always with the obscure indie titles. Come on, man. Okay, Heather?
Yeah, so I normally don't watch a lot of anything because I'm either working or gaming to write a review about it. So last year we watched all these Korean drama series called the Reply series. There's Reply 1997, Reply 1994, and Reply 1988. If you watched The Wonder Years or that 70s show and went, I really wish they would make a show about an era that's similar to what I lived in, like the 90s or the 80s. It's there, it's in Korean, there are subtitles, you can read it, but it is definitely a trip down memory lane. Very fun. There was talk of a US production called Answer Me 1999 that was going to happen. I don't know where that ended up, but they're basically going to take that same format and make it for US audiences one day. And then last one is Murder Among the Mormons. It's a documentary. I grew up Mormon, so like this was super fascinating stuff that we learned like through back channels as Mormon kids. This is stuff that you don't learn in the church, but it is very central to church history. Extremely fascinating stuff that deals in document forgeries that go that are Mormon church centered, but go all the way up to Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. I mean, you name it. There's forgeries centered around this one Mormon guy. Super interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, since talking about Netflix, I'll give one quick shout out. I saw a really good movie. It's on Netflix now called Molly's Game. Yeah, it's about a woman named Molly Bloom. She sets up all these secret underground poker games with celebrities and that kind of thing. But there's also the backstory that she used to be this skier who got horribly injured, and now she's trying to build her way back up through these poker games just to gain some kind of fame. Yeah, it's got that standard kind of, Goodfellas. She desires fame and power and money, but it goes a bit too far. But then she kind of brings it back a bit. It's very well written. Idris Elba's in it; he's very good. It's just a very good movie. I would advise watching it. Right.
And it refers to Tobey Maguire and how awful of a person he is. That's what I love about that one too.
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, so Molly's gang, because I'm huge into media stuff. The bad guy or the douche in that is actually based off.
Oh, the one
is it
the one played by Michael Cera? That one.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Okay,
That's verbatim a lot of the experiences about what he's like in the poker table and stuff. So if you're gonna check that out, remember.
Yeah. Keep that in mind. Keep Michael Cera, Tobey Maguire. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean my Spider-Man?
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I didn't realize how much of a jerk he was until much later, and it's becoming a problem on set because we're trying to do the new movies, and he's supposed to reprise his Spider-Man role, but he's such a diva on set apparently. But I'll leave it at that.
Well, but yeah,
it's weird because there's like 5 Spider-Mans, and he's still like, I'm the Spider-Man.
We're running out of time to talk about how much we hate Tobey Maguire. So I'm sure we'd all love to talk about. Unfortunately, we're all out of time. Thanks so much, guys, for turning up. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been another episode, Hey Paul Podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye. See y'all next time.
There, now wasn't that a fun podcast? If you want more from Hey Paul Player, be sure to visit our social media and our website. Don't forget to follow me at JTizzlefish, and the other writers' Twitters are linked below. That's it. Bye!